U.S. Secretary of Commerce Raimondo, in the interview, talked about how cars these days are like iPhones on wheel, and the car knows where you are, everywhere you go, and your routes, huge amounts of information.
Imagine a world where there's 3 million Chinese vehicles on the road in America, and Beijing could turn them all off at the same time.
Now, how absurd can you be? How absurd can you get in terms of building science fiction or building low-grade, ridiculous assertions with science fiction? Beijing shut down all 3 million cars running around in the US. When you hear this, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. It's so absurd. I think it's really getting ridiculous, this imagining thing from the US side. Secretary of Commerce, you're a serious official. How can you be making up things like this? Tesla has been running in China now for nearly a decade, and hundreds of thousands of Teslas are running around in China. I think what it all comes down to is two things. Number one, in the more advanced electric vehicles sector, China is coming up, and China is coming up very fast. BYD has surpassed Tesla in terms of volume, not only in China, but it is beginning to sell very well on a global basis. Not only electric cars, cars in general are selling very well, exported from China. China, for the first time in history, last year has surpassed Japan as the biggest car exporter in the world. So you have two things here. One is the Chinese are doing really well in cars overall, and then secondly, they're becoming more dominant now than ever in the electric vehicle sector. So for the US, at least for the politicians, they have to dream up of things to continue China bashing, including this vilification that the Chinese are going to follow you wherever you go. It's really getting absurd. All of this is really, US is now in a process of moving toward protectionism, using every means possible to aggressively break down the free market and the free trade system that has existed for the last several decades. Everything they're doing now, not only they, but also the Europeans are now trying to crack down on Chinese car exports, especially electric vehicles. All of this is protectionism. All of this is making sure that China does not continue to develop, continue to advance in technology, in trade, in products which were dominated by the Western world for decades. But China has the right to develop, has the right to improve the lives of its people, has the right to produce better products, more efficient, less costly products, especially in electric vehicles for the rest of the world, to put a stop to climate change, to improve, especially in the developing countries, means of transport. These are things which the Global South want. And the Global South wants it aggressively. This is why Chinese car exports have really increased significantly. I don't think any vilification by Raimondo is going to really make a difference. Call a spade a spade. Protectionism is protectionism. Call a spade a spade. Moving away from the free market is in fact moving away from the free market. This is what the US and the Europeans are doing, moving away from the free market. Protectionism, what does it do? Number one, it harms the consumers. Consumers in America and the US are going to be forced to pay more, significantly more, for a lesser product. This is very, very significant. This is why free market is good for all. Now, the second part is that protectionism actually damages and harms your industry. It harms the car industry in the US, harms the car industry in Europe by giving them the chance to be less efficient, less productive, and to produce a lesser product at a higher cost. Is that good for the society? Is that good for consumers? Is that good for the economy? I'm afraid not. It's short-term pops solutions may help the stock market a little bit in terms of these car companies' share price, but in the long term, they will learn nothing through competition, and they will end up being worse and worse and becoming less and less competitive on a global basis.